Hello and welcome to the MUBI Roundtable, the next generation of British cinema in partnership with BIFA here at the Seed Library at 100 Shoreditch in London. I'm Hanna Flint and I'm so excited to be joined by the directors Carmoon, Naqqash Khalid and Charlotte Regan, who are going to discuss their debut features, the current landscape of British cinema and their ambitions for the future. So no pressure, guys. Let's crack on. Should we get into it? So Naqqash, I'm going to come to you first. What were you doing before you got greenlit to make your first film?
Ooh, I was doing a bunch of bad jobs. I think I remember writing this, and I used to be a waiter, and I was working in a takeaway, and I was like dreaming this film up from then. And then I was working in academia for a little bit. I was teaching, and then I was able to like quit my job and see if this was going to work out. And then lockdown happened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lockdown. Was yours a lockdown feature writing session? What were you up to?
I was working in a garden centre. So I was working during lockdown and yeah, Hoard sort of became my kind of sanctum, and I'd write on the receipts and work the dialogue and then just come home and have these people waiting for me in this world waiting to cocoon me after a long day of shoveling up cold soil.
I have so many sideway questions about the garden centre, and did you fill up your flat with loads of plants?
No, but I did like to create a bit of drama in there because it's quite boring.
So are you saying you worked out Hoard with the people in there?
No, but they were good material. Watching them, it was yeah, it was quite scandalous.
Charlie, how about you? What were you up to before?
I was filming lots of like gangster rap and drill music videos mostly, which I kind of miss because there's something kind of easy about you just rock up to an estate and like you film a guy and his boys like doing gun fingers at the camera, and it's so much easier than like notes and the world of film. But yeah, just lots of hundreds of gangster rap music videos.
So I guess those music videos is kind of short filmmaking as well. What did, I guess, working on those and doing that kind of prepare you for like, your voice, like your vision? Was it kind of a really good playground for you to work that out?
I guess so. I mean, you get to like meet lots of crew and you get to do whatever you want, you know, like if you want to like pitch a rap video that's like all about like a squirrel going to work, often the rappers would be like, cool, if that's what you want to do, you know, because they're not paying for them, so you can just mostly do what you want. So I guess it opens up like the possibilities, and there's something about like no one caring about what you're making. Obviously like me and the music artist would care, but no one's like waiting on your gangster rap video, you know, and there's not like producers who are like, oh, what's going on with the budget, what's going to happen. There's something about that ownership of like no one giving a fuck what it's going to be that just lets you like do whatever you want. I kind of wish I could. Did you guys have that feeling? Like, I keep wishing I can recreate that feeling of like not caring about what people think when the film comes out, but now that you know that people react, you can't help but think about it. And
I kind of like to pretend no one exists, and that is just for my 14-year-old self is going to find it on Put Locker or something after a long day at school.
yeah.
It's like coming of age, isn't it? It's like you go from like innocence to experience, and I feel like the last year I've just been trying to get back to like naivety and innocence again and not think about it. Because like, as much as I'm like, oh, I'm not thinking about it, you can't help but think about it.
I guess because like when you first make your stuff and set it with your shots and things, it's you're the audience. You're making stuff that you want to see or you've not seen already. Is that kind of a part of it as well? It's like I'm making stuff for me and then I'll make stuff for other people, I guess.
I just don't think you can make stuff for people. Like the kinds of films that I want to make, I just have to be really selfish and be like, what is it that I want to express with the people that I'm making it with? And as soon as you start thinking about this imagined audience, like your integrity is on the line, because you can make stuff for an imagined audience, but then it could not land with that imagined audience. And then what else do you have? You have nothing left. At least if it doesn't land with an audience. I think I came to terms with in camera being like, if it doesn't land, it still lands with me.
Yeah.
And it still lands with the people that made it. So then I can feel like I still have my integrity. You have to follow like your selfish desire and your instinct of being true to what has driven you to make that film.
And I think it will go back to like the short filmmaking as well, and like how that's kind of you establishing who you are really. Like Luna, did you feel like that really gave you a kind of, I guess, a foundation of what you wanted to say?
I think it's hard because I definitely realised that I'm a bit of an anomaly. Like I started on a scheme that was for sort of underrepresented talent in the UK, so I was 19 when I wrote Nosebleed. So for me, it was genuinely just about expressing things that were happening in my life at that time in a way that I hadn't seen them the way I wanted to see my version of it on screen. So, don't know, you just become more and more nuanced and more knowledgeable as you get older, and hopefully that soaks through to the screen of, you know, your stories that they. And then it's like, yeah, you get more technically more knowledgeable, but then you will always want to go back to how you were making things when you were younger, like most creative people. So, yeah, sometimes then try not to intellectualize everything and that actually just keep following a feeling of how I want people to feel at the end of it and how I, more importantly, want to feel by the end of it. So it's like these invisible sort of like tight ropes that I'm constantly trying to follow. Yeah.
Does that resonate with you, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, I try, but it's like after Scrapper, I'm finding it harder and harder. Like after the festival experience and being so like overexposed to like people's feedback and like reviews and people being like, this is what the film is, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if it is, but you know, nice that you found something else. Now when I sit down to write, it just all like, it's like 1 in 5 times that I can write and just be writing for me, but the other 4 times I'm like, oh, will it get into this festival, will this critic like it? You know, you just can't help, because everyone around the film tells you how important that stuff is from the moment it's done. You know, your producers try and protect you, but it's a lot of like, we need to get into this festival and we need to get distribution and we need to do this. So now I can't help but think about that quite a lot. It's hard to switch off from, which is a shame, isn't it? But I still can now and then, and can get back to it with like, I think I'm just gonna like spend a year filming like my friends' gangster rap videos and doing that kind of stuff and reminding myself that no one cares what you're making, just you, innit? Yeah.
I'm a critic, and I will say, don't listen to critics. Do what you want to do. Critics are just there to facilitate the in-between. Like, it's not about you, so fuck critics. Oh no, please give me work. Okay. I guess each of your films are so distinctive, but I guess is there something in particular that you felt when you made it that you wanted to like have in your toolkit, something that you took away that I'm going to bring onto my next film, whether it's like crew or whether it's a kind of like ritual or something that really made you kind of think, this is something that I want to keep with me as I continue my filmmaking career?
I think about like the process and the infrastructure of making a film a lot. Like I think a lot about like how I want people to feel when they're making the film with me. And I think I'm reevaluating a lot of like, it's kind of like going on a roller coaster, you know where the bends are, you kind of know which parts are more jagged and which parts are kind of like the drops. And I think part of my responsibility I'm feeling is like to create an experience for a collaborator. And I think I would do things maybe a little bit differently now I know how it kind of all works. That sounds quite abstract, but I think I'm really invested in the process of making something. So I think I would spend more time on building what I want that experience to be. And like ultimately, yeah, you know, a 90-minute film or however long the film is exists, but like that's 2 years of my life. That's like years of other people, like months of other people's life too. And at the end of it, you're only going to remember like how you felt and how you made people feel.
Yeah, I think mainly stamina. I didn't realise how exhausted I would be. I really got to like train my body and my brain before going into that, because it's such a feat of, you know, if you're doing splits, which I'm doing splits again, I've got to get upstairs and my body ready, because it is such a mission of just, you know, going through that
When
all
you
day.
say splits,
Like
just in case people haven't.
Like if you're shooting nights, like long periods of shooting nights. My next thing's quite nocturnal, so I'm like slowly preparing into, you know,
it is
enjoying myself
important.
in that. But I think just stamina, and I mean I've always run my sets the way that I'd like to experience a set, you know, so that's never going to change. Like everyone eats together, everyone's a family, everyone is an important part of the cog, from hair to makeup to catering to gaffers to actors. Like everyone should be together, and I just think that just makes a happier set when it's like family and really people feel like, you know, when you love people and you get to know people and it's not transactionary, it really is like, I love learning about people's lives on my set, that they can see that sincerity, and then they just sort of like, they give you so much, and that is, I feel like you can feel that on the screen of my film of how much people cared about it, because that's the only reason I do it, is for these school trip like feelings with people that I'm still chasing to this day. So.
Yeah. Charlie, how about you? Love ethic?
Probably stamina too. I feel like we've spoke about this as well. Like when everyone tells you the edit's going to be 8 weeks, but then they all know it's going to be like 8 months. Yeah. And I'm like, cool, after 8 weeks, I'll go on like a little holiday. Like I'll start thinking about other work. But in reality, that edit was like, I thought I was doing the whole like Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it's people. Like we were super lucky that we had, like we were making a film about kids, and there's something about like kids that haven't acted before. They just bring something like magical to the set, you know. You like change your lens and they're like, oh my god, that is sick, bruv. And then everyone's like, oh, we're doing kind of a cool job, innit? And my mum would remind me every day when I would call her and be like, it's so stressful, mum, and she'd be like, you are not saving anyone's life, so you need to just like calm down, it's a very fun job. And the kids really reminded us of that. They just came and they enjoyed it, and they made everyone like kind of like what you're talking about, get closer. Like Lola was just like a legend. So I think I just hope I could find a Lola and a Molly for every job, because Molly shot my film, and we just had this like relationship where we weren't precious about each other's jobs, and you know, like we just spoke about everything, and it was so like vulnerable and open. And I don't think I'll ever find it. I haven't had a job like that since, you know, when I've done other TV stuff. But yeah, so I'm always just searching for like a Lola and a Molly on every job, like your little anchors that are just like the pure joy of every single day. Like every time I'd get to set and see their faces, I'd be like, cool, it's gonna be a great day. Yeah.
Okay, so you're now part of British cinema. You're officially a part of the club. I guess for you then.
When did that happen? There was no initiation.
Did they not give you like I think you get a British cap, like a cap's like football, right? They give you a cap every time you play for England. Did you not get the cap in the post?
I did not get an email or anything.
BIFA, please sort. We'll get that sorted after this, I promise. If we just have to go to the shop and buy you one.
Okay.
But I guess we have a long history of cinema in Britain. So I guess was your work in any way responding to things that films that you've seen, filmmakers, kind of inspiration or kind of conversation or kind of moving on genres? How did you feel about it?
I was watching a lot of like British New Wave films, and I was really inspired by kind of the construction of the angry young man. Like I was watching all those performances like Richard Harris, Alan Bates, like all those actors, and thinking, whoa, they really embody a time. And even though I'm not from that time, like I feel like I've said this a lot and it sounds a little bit academic, but I feel like the actor, their body is like a sociological document, and I think they contain so much of their time, and it feels like everything that goes into like the body of an actor on screen is telling you everything about the outside world. And I was thinking a lot about like the angry young man specifically, and how today that felt like the anxious young man. So I feel like I was in like kind of a dialogue with all of those like post-war British New Wave films. I think sometimes we can forget that cinema is like a really young medium. It's still figuring itself out. It's still finding itself. And like, I think like I see my job and responsibility is like trying to like almost break it and to like figure out what my grammar is. I will say I think directing is like incredibly lonely, but I think there's something quite communal about making a film, because it feels like you're in a dialogue with everything that's come before you. And there's something quite beautiful and romantic about being in that kind of dialogue. I am rambling.
No, we love it. It's amazing. And I guess like Charlie with Scrapper, were you like referencing anything when you were kind of working it out how you want it to look?
It's just like very dodgy references, but me and Molly kept saying we were shooting like the Bourne Ultimatum mixed with Harry Potter, like just at like 1/100th of the budget, or probably less than that, I don't know. I kind of like stuff where I come out the cinema feeling happier than when I went in, like stuff that feels like an experience, I guess. Like, and I think with like working class cinema in particular, I kind of found that I'd watch it and I'd be like, that doesn't feel like the happiness and the joy I felt growing up. Like I want something that captures that joy. Like when you're a kid, you have no idea that you have less than anyone. It's only when you go into like more middle class spaces that everyone's like, oh, that's weird. That's a weird thing that you've just told us there. So I just wanted something that captured that that joy, and was about working class people that like got to have more happiness than like standing on a balcony and seeing a sunset, you know, like, because darkness is full of humour, and that's what I kind of missed about those worlds. But yeah, Harry Potter and Born Ultimatum, which like really stressed our producer Theo out whenever we'd reference that, and Theo would just like despair, and he would drag us to the cinema every Friday. He'd call it Family Cinema Day and bring us to watch like a really artistic film, and he'd be like, what about this? This could be a good reference you talk about in interviews. And me and Molly were like, no, it's Born Ultimatum.
I mean, it is really important, this idea of disrupting what's already been and creating something. I think we've talked about decolonizing the idea of what film should be. Like Luna, with your film, like, is that part of what you've talked a bit about, like having your vision and kind of, again, it feels quite disruptive what we're seeing in the film. How are you feeling going into it? Was there anything you were trying to fight against?
Yeah, I guess I'm always fighting against some sort of like pigeonhole, like you saying that I've resonated with, because I feel like for the past sort of 15 years, I don't really like a lot of British cinema. Like, it just feels like a lot of poverty porn, a lot of safari making, and it's what makes me so frustrated, because I feel like cinema was way more progressive in Britain in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, like mid 80s cut-off point, which to me is my favourite melting pot times. Like, my favourite directors are like Ken Russell, Joseph Losey, like Jack Clayton, like all of the old BBC teleplays, bring them back.
Yes.
You know, they really inspire me, like seeing worlds where people, you know, like sound like us, or look like the people that you grew up with, but there is a vibrancy, and there is, you know, that's not the core of what that story is, it's the underbelly, and it's there, and it's thoughtful and nuanced, but that's not just what that film is, that's not just what that story is. And I feel like often not a lot of these sort of structures tell you that you have to tick these kind of boxes if you look like a certain way or you from a certain place. And I kind of, the more you watch and the more you have that sort of film vocabulary to tell them otherwise what you want to create, that helps you be able to paint that. And also just wanted to make a film that I wanted to watch, and sometimes I do just crave watching my film when it's raining outside. I'm like, I could really watch that scene, because that's who I wanted to make it for, really.
It's the Christmas Day movie that we've been waiting for, I think.
The stinky, filthy.
Yeah, that's the afternoon film that we need to watch. But yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. I think it's a really interesting point what you're saying about like being pigeonholed. And I think certainly within camera, you're really directly talking about, then you have people who are in charge of giving budgets and all this type of stuff, and they're saying this is what you're supposed to be writing about. Yeah, that experience has been eye-opening about the industry of trying to work in an authentic way, but still like the people.
To be careful, Hannah. What I say.
Yeah, but I guess it's
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the in camera came from just like me being quite disgusted at like neoliberal representation politics and how hollow it is, and this idea that black and brown faces in high places will like liberate people. It won't, you know? I think when you're making a film, regardless of who you are, what your background is, like there's this almost like idea of you, and then there's you, and it can be sometimes challenging coming up against like you in the film that you're making, and then this idea of what you could be in a marketplace. Because like when I'm working with someone on screen who's also like me, a young brown man, I'm inheriting everyone's biases against what it means to navigate the world. I think as soon as like, as directors, like we have an amazing responsibility of like, we're kind of inventing something with like a group of people, you know, like collectively you're inventing something new. And I think when you're inventing, you're also considering what the inheritance is, whether it's like how working class people have been depicted in the last 10, 15 years, like as we've already talked about, and the dangers of that. But also like I think Bell Hooks talks about this, where there's this idea of like, in marginality, there is a sense of liberation and a space for you to really like invent and create something new. And it can be something quite rich rather than something quite negative.
Yeah. Charlie, if you've like felt that as well, like this kind of the idea, what you're saying there, it's like the idea people have of you as a filmmaker versus how you actually feel.
Yeah, even what you were saying earlier, like even doing things like this, it feels like a performative part of the job, you know? And when you're performing, you can't help but like give people what they want and what they're expecting. And I think when you're making like a working class film, then they kind of want this like working class kid to show up and still be, and I'm like, well, I'm having an identity crisis with making film, because I'm like, I'm not really part of like that world anymore, but then I'm still not fully accepted into the world I'm becoming a part of because of work. So it feels very like performative and like a constant identity crisis when you're making film, and especially when you do interviews and stuff, and it's like very based on class, or like when you just make films and the character is like even remotely similar to you, constantly like these comparisons are drawn between like the amount of times I've been asked if like Scrap Art is like my autobiography, and it's like I'm really not, I swear I'm not.
Documentary,
It's a documentary. I swear I'm not arrogant enough to think I need like a autobiographical film like at this age, isn't it? But it's just like I can imagine everyone suffers it, and I feel like we're lucky enough that, and I don't know if this was a thing before, but I feel like it's such a community now between people who make debut features, you know, and I have so many friends who were doing them at the same time. Like even when I used to like DM you and be like, this is a nightmare, and you'll be like, yeah, I've had this too. Yeah. So luckily because of that, like we're so open about the experiences now.
Shared feeling though, that's really important, community, about like being able to lean on each other, and that must have been amazing to know that you could like vent to people who could only understand a unique situation that you're going through, because like you said, making your first film, you only ever do that once.
I don't know, I don't actually think there is much of a community. Like I have like 2 people that I message and it's basically you two. So I don't really feel like that, but because it is quite lonely. Like what you do is like 98% of the time it's you and you're alone with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also like I never met a film director before making the film. So I felt my experience was actually quite isolating and actually quite lonely.
Yeah.
But then I met Mo and Hussein, who was editing next door to me, and we formed a real bond and solidarity. And I love his film Sky Peels.
Yes.
And like having that, and then I met you, and then having like the few conversations that we've had, like exchanging our experiences has made me feel like less alone in that. And I would love to have more of that.
But I guess that's beautiful now. Like you might not have had it for your first, but certainly going forward, you've got that. And whether your community is 10 people, 3 people on a group chat, I think that's important. Does that kind of resonate a little bit about how you feel like whether you fit in the kind of British landscape of cinema or you don't? Maybe not.
I don't feel like I fit in of now.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I fit in of another time.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I fit in of now. I feel like I even more would have fit in more in like 2006. Like then era of, I feel like British cinema felt, that was the last time I felt quite excited.
So specific.
Is that
what were
era?
the films?
Well, from I'd say like 2005 to sort of like 2009 was the last period where I felt like I was seeing new faces as well, like actors. Like I felt like I was seeing performance. Like we had like Sam Riley and like Andrea Riseborough and Sean Harris. You had even like, you know, a more mainstream film, something like Brighton Rock. Like really excited me. Like that's such a beautiful film, and so many people went to see it. Even something like Brother's Head. Like, you know, there was a lot of strange, unique films at that time, and that was the last time that for me it felt exciting. And I think it felt exciting because I felt like there was a lot of talent that perhaps people that we hadn't seen, that there was a lot of working class people or people being found and street casted that were then circulated. They were kept alive and kept allowing to work, and you know, some of them went and worked like in Europe or worked in the States. But now there's not really a particular pool of like British actors where I'm like, oh wow, that person interests me, because not everyone can enter this industry and sustain it anymore as like performers. So that for me is like an era that I kind of miss, but I do feel like we'll make its way back with more directors like us who will cast people who, you know, we don't care if they're doing this. Like we work with non-actors and actors. It's just whoever feels like they're the right essence of that role. And that's what I find hopeful, is that I do feel like the people around me who are my contemporaries, they do define that. Like we're not just going to hire someone for insurance reasons in the UK. Like we're going to hire people who feel like they capture that essence of that person that we've been cocooning for like 2 years. And that is what makes me feel hopeful about all of us, and like Rain, and I love Rain so much and her work. You know, that makes me excited.
And I guess this comes to my final question. The blue sky thinking, like if the sky is the limit for making a film, what would you like to do, Charlie? What would you love to make? Or is there anyone you could possibly work with? Who would that be? And they could be in your blue sky film.
They could be in my blue sky film. All I can think about is Scooby-Doo. So this is...
We've been talking about Scooby-Doo prior to this interview.
We just need to do like free director kind of Scooby-Doo
Scooby-Doo, this is it.
situation, casting only pop stars exclusively.
Maybe it's an limited series, anthology series, and then you all do
you
it
know
in your
what?
own style.
Like, which is the camera? Is it this? Like, people think I'm being ironic and I'm joking when I say I have a deep desire to make a Scooby-Doo, and I might not have careerist ambitions, but I would like to make a Scooby-Doo film. I'm not being ironic. This is full sincerity. I want to make a Scooby-Doo film.
Yeah. Luna, have you got a Scooby-Doo in you?
No.
See, I want to see
Unless
that now.
everyone's like having a really bad trip and it just gets really hysterical
Ken
and
Kesey
just
sort of Scooby-Doo.
terrifying. The Zawowski Scooby-Doo. I would love to make a children's film. Like, I've always said that, like, I miss the kind of strange sort of BBC, CBC, like kids' movies and shows, like sort of spooky, eerie, strange, like Children's of the Stone. Like,
Charlie, has that inspired you?
You know what I really want to do, yeah, is a film with Danny Dyer. I feel like I love Danny Dyer's old work. Not to say I don't love his new work, I just haven't seen it. I'm sure it's great as well.
You can do for Danny Dyer what, like, Quentin Tarantino did for John Travolta.
I doubt it. I doubt I've got anything in me. I always think directing is like, someone once said to me, like, if like the world was ending and they were like, what skills do we need? Like, quick, let's get people who have skills. He was like, all you could do is tell people to look happy or sad. So, and that is probably all I could say to Danny is look happy or sad. So I think he's got it in him, and I just want to take credit for it. That's all. Yeah.
Well, on that bombshell, thank you so much, Luna Carmoon, Naqqash Khalid, and Charlotte Regan. Thank you for your insight and your art. Can't wait to see what you do next. But you can explore the full collection of first features in the Next Generation British debuts streaming on MUBI now. You guys can have a little watch. But until then, thank you so much.
Good times, eh?
Nothing will ever be the same.